talk to you guys about Abu Nafil Ta'us. They used to give him one of the titles as the Eagle of the Desert, or بالعربي نسر البرية. So his name was Kamil Girgis Ayub. He was born on the 1st of April 1922. Abu Nafil, he was such a simple man, and he lived a simple life. He was in the area, he lived in Bara Musa, in Sayadin, an area in the Zagazig in Egypt. When he was 12, his family decided, we're gonna move to Cairo, and they moved and lived in Shubra. While they were living there, he used to attend Mary Girgis church in that area, and his father of confession was Abuna Girgis Butrus, which was the priest in that church, and he was like overseeing his spiritual life. Kamil, at that point, he loved the liturgy so much, and serving as a deacon was something so important. He diligently served with all his heart in that service. He grew and he graduated with a baccalaureate. At that point, the baccalaureate was the highest thing he can achieve, and he achieved it with high grades. So the baccalaureate is like, in our standards, it's like A levels. So he achieved the highest at that point. After his graduating, he went to work part of this stores called Sidnawi stores. One of the stories that it said he was so faithful in his work, when he discovered one of his colleagues was not honest, especially when it came to money, he decided, I'm gonna confront this person, maybe he will repent. Little that he knew, that person was adamant in his ways. So he threatened him with a knife and saying, if you're gonna blow the whistle on me, I am gonna kill you. And there were only both of them in the office at that point. Kamil at that point had one of two choices. I'm either going to subdue to his threatening and listen to him and adhere to it, or I'm gonna stick to my ethics and the moral compass that God has given me, and I'm gonna tell somebody who's higher that this person, okay, is doing something wrong in the company. But if I do that, I'm gonna die. So he decided, I'm gonna stick to my morals, okay? So while he was trying to defend himself, the only option he had is to jump off a window. And that was from the 4th story high. When he landed, nothing happened to him. And he kept saying, so Mary has held me and landed me safely. العذراء مسكتني and she نزلتني على الأرض so safely. Okay, so he was that amazing in his spirituality, even from a younger age. Then he left those stores because of that situation, and then he was commissioned to work as part of the Navy in the British Army. So I could imagine the prestigious job at that point to work part of the Navy in the British Army. So then at the same time, he was discipled by Abuna Mina al-Baramusi, aka Baba Krullos. Oh, and I forgot to say, the Pope that ordained him was Pope Ioannis the 19th. So now he kind of lived with two popes, Amba Ioannis and Pope Krullos, but as Abuna Mina al-Baramusi. And that's where his relationship with Abuna Mina or Baba Krullos started. From that point, he was discipled by him, and he absolutely loved him so much. Then he decided, like, Khalas, I want to go and like become a monk. He got into a white suit, like he's going to like become a monk. He wore his nice white suit, went to Al-Adra Isturian and asked to meet Amba Theophilos, who is the abbot and the bishop of the monastery. Amba Theophilos heard from his disciple, there is this dude wearing a white proper suit coming to become a monk. And he was like, this is like a Fafi boy. We don't have these things in the monastery, okay? So he told his disciple, make sure that he sleeps tonight in the room downstairs. The disciple looks at Sayyidina and was like, Sayyidina, are you serious? And I was like, yeah. Make sure he sleeps in the room downstairs. Sayyidina was like, make him sleep there. The room downstairs was like a basement room, had all the karakib, all the bad stuff. It didn't have a bed, did not have electricity, it didn't have ventilation, didn't have anything, okay? And it had some guests in there in a form of mice. But Kamil, because he loved to become a monk and his heart ached for that, he decided he's going to endure the night. By the morning, Amba Theophilos thinking this guy is going to abandon everything and he's going to flee and run and not stay. He comes in and he was so persistent that I'm going to become a monk. At that point, Amba Theophilos was like, you know what? I'll let you become a monk. And that was, I'll put you under trial. That was in August 1948. And you can see God's favor and his passion for monasticism is that by the end, by November, in November 1948, he was ordained a monk, under the name of Abuna Filtaos Styriani. Then, at the end of, he became a priest by the end of 1948, promoted to become a hegumen at the end of 1951. So you can see, like, his promotion is coming very quickly just because of who he is. As a monk, he loved the aesthetic life and the life of solitude. For quite a while, he was persistent that his father of confession to let him have this life of solitude. It was like, I want to live in the fortress of the monastery, which is Suri al-Idder. This is an abandoned place. It's not habitable for people to live in. And like, it has snakes, it has all sorts of things, not even like mattresses or electricity or anything like that. After a long persistence, his father of confession said, okay, fine, go and live in it. When he went in there, for the first few nights, he was attacked so much by the enemy. Like they were appearing to him in sorts of different images, snakes, scorpions, everything. But he decided, I am not going to run away. I'm going to stay. And I'm going to persevere in this place. And he did. And he managed to stay in that place for nearly 12 years. Until Abuna Mina Bramosi becomes Baba Krullos. And he goes to him. Before then, he also lived in a cave in one of the mountains. Near a monk was called Abuna Antonius el-Suryani, who becomes Baba Shenouda III. And that's where his relationship with Baba Shenouda started. So you can see the relationship between Baba Krullos and Baba Shenouda, where it's coming to fruition. After that, he lived there. And after that, Baba Shenouda decided, I want you to go and rebuild or restore Marimina's monastery. And because he loved Marimina, he was like, okay, I'll do it. And one of the stories is that while they were building, they had obviously at that time, they didn't have cars or trucks or stuff like that, so they had donkeys on carts. The donkey on the cart, they only had one, the donkey decided to flee and leave them. And all the monks were like, how are we gonna carry now all the mortar, all the bricks, all the water, all these things, how are we gonna carry it? Abuna Filtaos so humbly, so silently decides, you know what, I'm gonna pick up the cart, I'm gonna carry it, and we're gonna get the stuff that needed to be done. And he did that. And after a few days, while they were building one of the walls, one of the monks goes to him, Abuna, guess what? I saw Marimina yesterday. He came to me and I was like, blessed are you. That's an amazing. He goes, he didn't come for me. He came for you. I was like, what? He was like, Marimina is telling you, Marimina will never forget that you have decided to be the donkey for Marimina. And you can see the love between both of them. After he did that, he was so eager that he wanted to go back to his cell and back to his monastery. But Sayyidina Baba Krullos said, no, I want you to go to Cairo, part of Al-Adra Suryan headquarters, which is Al-Adra Al-Azbawiyya. I want you to serve there. Because he loved Baba Krullos, he was like, okay, Hadr ya Sayyidina. And he had this obedience about him. So he served there for 5 years with his heart and soul and everything. And people around in that area absolutely loved him. But meanwhile, while he's doing that, he constantly kept asking Baba Krullos, I want to go back to my cell. I want to go back to the monastery. I don't want to be in the world. After 5 years, Sayyidina said, you know what? You can go back. When he went back, Amba Theophilos has passed away. And the abbot of that monastery was Abu Antonius Istouriani, which was aka Baba Shenouda. And because he knew he loved the life of solitude, he built him a cell outside of like where they all sit in a garden far away. And he stayed in that cell until the day he departed. And he loved that cell. Like, even when he was so ill and he would be in hospital, his disciple would be with him, but by spirit, he would leave the hospital bed and he would travel to stay in his cell. To the point, some of the monks would see him in hospital and call his disciple. It's like, where is Abuna Filtaos? It's like, he's sleeping on the bed here. I'm like, no, he's here. Like, we see him, we just saw him walking into his cell. That's how much he loves his cell and the life of solitude. Then after that, his Jubilee, his 60th, like his Golden Jubilee, was a big, massive celebration that Pope Shenouda, at that point, Pope Shenouda became, like, Abu Antonius became Pope Shenouda. It was such a big celebration that had Pope Shenouda, had bishop, monks celebrating his Golden Jubilee. He was so loved by so many people because he had one of the things about him, I'm not gonna judge somebody else. And he was so well respected and honored in the monastery. So whenever they wanted to judge somebody or put somebody on trial, they would come to him and he would say, how am I gonna judge somebody else if I'm carrying my sins are following me all the place? I don't have the right to judge anybody else. And they respected him for that. And then on the 29th of March, he was given what they called a monastic schema, which is al-Iskima al-Ruhbani. He was the first monk to be wearing this thing. Okay, what you can see in the picture is basically this belt made from leather, but has got crosses. What it means is that that particular monk now has to adhere to much strict rules. Like, he has to recite so many psalms, he has to read how many chapters in the Bible, how many mataniyat, all of these things. Normally they give that to the abbots of the monastery. He was the first monk to receive that apart from the abbots. And then on the 2nd of November, he celebrated 60 years of his monastic life. And that again was a beautiful service and celebration in his monastery. The monks around, they absolutely loved him. In the early hours of the morning of the 17th of March, really early in the morning, he departed to go with his beloved Christ. After 62 years of serving him in the monastery, at the age of nearly 88. Abuna Filtaos had so many gifts about him. He had spiritual discernment, he had spiritual revelation, like he would tell you stuff that you didn't tell him. He would see it and he will tell you stuff. And his prayers used to do a lot of miracles. He was known, he was given two names, like Nisr al-Barriya, which is the eagle of the desert, and he was given also the intercessor of the impossible. Okay, so if you have anything impossible, ask him. And also it's known, if you ask Baba Shenouda and Abuna Filtaos together, they are called the intercessors of the impossible. And God loved them so much that even the day he departed, okay, Baba Krulus before him, Baba Shenouda after him. And he was in the middle. He is actually his anniversary with Baba Shenouda. And even when he was a monk and Baba Krulus passed away, he was still his spiritual father. Baba Krulus was constantly appearing to him and he was doing a lot of miracles with him. So you could see the relationship they had together. And this link, I would recommend for you guys to copy that link in order to get to the film, because it's one of the most amazing films you're gonna watch. Oops, thank you. It's one of the most amazing films you're gonna watch. It's one of the new ones, and it's not cringing, it's not any of these things. The other thing I would say about him is that he was an anchorite. He would travel in time, he would travel from place to place, and people would see him in different places. He was an amazing saint, and I absolutely love him. One last thing I would say to people for them to be aware of, okay? If a saint's name keeps popping up in front of you, or his video, or his picture, or his name being mentioned, know something. That saint wants to be your friend. Now it's your choice what you want to do with that friendship.
In the spirit of Baba Kurulus, we're going to keep things simple. So we'll do a take two. So we won't go into the details, but as I said, we'll keep things simple. From some of the stories that I've learned reading into him and some of the things that I've seen, he was a very, very simple character. He was also a man of prayer, deep man of prayer. In fact, when he became Pope, often people wanted a diplomat. He was Pope during a time where there was wars, where the church was falling apart. Everybody was against each other to the point that even some bishops tried to overthrow him and take him off the seat. But he was a man of prayer. And I will repeat that many, many times because he truly, truly was. There were times where people would turn around and say to him, "What are we going to do now?" He says, "I'm going to go pray." He would stop, he would go pray. And they were like, is this really, really what he's going to say? Is he crazy? No, he really went to pray. Every single time, God provided him, as I said, everybody wanted a diplomat. God provided a saint. But he provided the best kind of diplomat there was. Under Pope Kyrillos, many things happened. He ended up building an immense relationship with the President Nasser at the time. At a time where there was conflict and war, because of him, he actually had a miracle with his daughter. And because of that, they ended up having an agreement where they allowed the churches to be built. I think it's 35 churches built per year. And actually, in fact, the cathedral that was built at the time was built from the taxpayers' money, or whatever the Egyptian system is at the time. But the main thing to understand is during everything that he ever did, he did with prayer. When he became Pope, there was a huge banquet made out for him. He asked one of his servants to actually go make him some tamia. So imagine, this is you've got the head of the church asking for tamia. There were other stories of him where, again, you've got the head of the church and he would wear his shoes until the rubber would be completely gone. His garments were always completely simple. All the pictures that you see of him were all staged, but in reality, behind those closed doors, he was a very simple man. He had humility in all of his actions. He loved solitude. When he was in the desert, he loved being in the cave. He wanted absolute solitude. In fact, I'm trying to just find the quote quickly, where he had testified that when he became Pope, for him it was his test. He was like, let God's will be done. When, as I said, with the bishop that tried to overthrow him at the time, I think it was Metropolitan Ioannis of Giza. At the time, there was a petition to overthrow Pope Kyrillos. And what did Pope Kyrillos go do? He went and he said to them, "I'm going to pray." He prayed so hard. He said, "God, if you don't intercede, this will be my last day." And the next day, that bishop, instead of taking his medicines, ended up drinking pesticide. And he died. In fact, everybody who tried to sign those petitions actually had horrible, horrible deaths. And that just shows the power of his prayer. Not to say that that's what will happen, but it's the power of prayer. When that bishop died, however, Baba Kyrillos was not happy. He went to the funeral and he cried. He cried bitterly. He had a heart of true forgiveness. As I said, there were miracles. I'm jumping back and forth. Sorry, as I said, my slides have gone. There were miracles when he was at the windmill. It's known as the Tahuna, if anybody's heard, where robbers had come and they hit him in the head. He was bleeding profusely. When he regained his consciousness, he was still bleeding at the time. He took a picture of Saint Mina and put it on his head and stopped bleeding. But the bit that people don't realize was he ended up having to walk 24 kilometers, which is a marathon. He walked 24 kilometers after having an open head wound to the hospital, to the point that even the doctors were astonished. He, as I said, he fought his battles in prayer. He ate very minimal food. He barely slept. He would sleep. Everybody would think that you'd go to sleep at early hours of the morning. Hi, baby. But he didn't. He would do all his work in the middle of the night. He would write his letters in the middle of the night. He was a man of reverence, and he had a humble heart. And when he had died, what they found in his drawers were the letters of all the critics and all the horrible things that were said to him, where he would take that to God daily and pray for the people that stood against him. That was the kind of man that Pope Kyrillos was. So, come here. So he, as I said, he was a very humble man, and I will say that till the end, because if there's one thing that you need to know about Pope Kyrillos, it was his humility and his prayer. And he truly, truly used prayer as his weapon in and out. There are many stories, and I can link you to them. And I will have a presentation that you can download, which had lots of the links to them. But we thought, in the spirit of Pope Kyrillos, we'll keep things simple and humble. Take two.
So it's very hard to use 10 minutes to speak about Pope Shenouda because there's so much to talk about. So I tried to kind of keep it very simple. I'm going to talk to you briefly about his background and his life. And then I'm going to pick 5 or 6 things which I find inspire me in who he is and his life and his character. So he was born on the 3rd of August 1923 in Egypt, Asyut. His name was Nazir Rufail, graduated from Cairo University with a degree in history. He was quite an active Sunday school servant, so he's quite known for his Sunday school and deep biblical knowledge. And then he became a monk in the Syrian monastery, Wadi Natrun. And then, as Mary mentioned earlier, he took the name of Father Antonio Susuriani when he became a monk, then ordained as a bishop in 1962 by Pope Kyrillos, and then became the Bishop of Christian Education and the Dean of the Coptic Orthodox Theological Seminary. He was actually really known for his theology and for his just knowledge and his education. So he's a very intellectual man. And then eventually he became obviously the Pope of Alexandria, the 117th Pope, and led the church for over 40 years. We've all had the pleasure of seeing him either on TV or meeting him in person, which is an amazing blessing. He died on the 17th of March 2012 at the age of 88 and is remembered as one of the most influential leaders and figures in our Coptic church. So I'm going to focus on 5 or 6 things that I really love about him. So the first one is he was a faithful servant. So as I said, he was serving in Sunday school. And has anybody read his book, The Release of the Spirit? Or heard of it? If anybody likes reading, this is one of the best books that he wrote, and one of the best books in the church, in my opinion, actually. It's extremely, extremely deep. It tells you a lot about the kind of man he is and how deep he was and how spiritual he was. And he talks, there's a whole chapter on a vision that he had, which is to do with his service. So he starts it with saying that I had a prideful thought about how good of a servant I am. And then something happened that night. He was basically, I don't know if this was a vision or a dream, but basically he was transported to heaven. He basically saw all the glory of heaven. He speaks in so much detail. It's like a chapter of 13 pages about his experience. And he speaks about so much detail about what he saw. And he goes to heaven and he sees this place where there's a place for it's a ministry of servants. So that's where all the servants were. It was kind of their membership, basically. And the angel, he speaks to the angel, he's like, oh, my name should be here. This is where I belong. I'm one of the servants. And the angel says to him, well, no, your name is not on here. You're not, you don't belong to the ministry of servants. And he's like, but how? I serve every week in Sunday school. I'm a dedicated servant. I'm well known around the churches. Everyone knows me. I even see people who serve with me in church. So I belong here. He's like, no, you don't. And he explains about how this angel starts to show him reasons as to why he's not included in this servant club, basically. And things he says, there's so many things. So he goes into detail about what was wrong with his service, and the flaws and the things that he saw. But just to give you examples, so the angel pointed out to him that once you shouted at one of the people you were serving because they were, doing something wrong, and that stopped them from coming to church, and you never asked about them again. But he said, okay, but I dedicate my life to service. Every Sunday I go. He's like, okay, you give 1 hour of your week to service, but there's other people, other servants that you see around you who spend hours preparing for that 1 hour during their week. And they truly give their life to service. And then another one was that, so you only cared about the people attending your service. What about the people that were far away? You never really asked about them. So the angel highlighted to him so many things that were not good with his service, to the extent that the Pope cried and he was very remorseful about it. So he said to him, give me another chance to go back and serve better. And actually the conclusion was, the angel said to him, you're serving yourself, you're not serving God. You think you're serving God, you're serving yourself. So it's a good reminder to us to kind of examine our service, even if we think we're serving, even if we think we're, if we get this prideful feeling about serving, is to really examine ourselves in the same way that Pope Shenouda did. So he came back and he said in the book that I had the honor of coming back and being given another chance to become a better servant. And we see that later on in his life. I mean, I'm sure he was a great servant throughout, but he saw his flaws that much that he wanted to work on them. And he became an amazing servant, one of the most influential and amazing saints in our church. So number 2, he was a writer and a poet. We've all heard of his poems and his books. So he's written over 100 books that have been translated into English. They're written in Arabic, translated in English and other languages. One of them is The Release of the Spirit, but there's loads of books. And there's also loads of poems that he wrote. These are a few quotes from some of his writings. So The Release of the Spirit is, what's really nice about it is it just takes you to a spiritual level, and it really shows you how he was and how he kind of, so for example, if you want your spirit to be released, do not let material things control your heart. The more a person detaches himself from the world, the more he becomes attached to God. Like just seeing things from a spiritual eye and not a physical eye. And I'm sure you've all heard of the song, the poem actually, A Stranger I Lived on This Earth. And it's got turned into a song. So a lot of his poems have been turned into songs. And I just want to read you an extract from one of my favorite ones, which is the one about Barabbas. Do we know that one? It was the guy that was going to be released instead of Christ. So I'm just going to read you an extract from that. It was not you who listened to the serpent, but my mother who sinned, and to its call listened. It was not you who plucked from the garden, but my mother who of its fruit plucked illicit. You are holy and pure, whereas I am the one who in evil strayed and was lost. You are in the high heaven, whereas I am the son of the earth, whose origin is its dust. You are the Lord and God, whereas I am your sinful, disobedient slave. So why is it you who are crucified here, while I, the sinner, am free and boastful? A wisdom, O Lord, I cannot comprehend, and a tenderness limitless and sublime. Obviously, this was written in Arabic, so this is a translation, but it's such a beautiful poem if you get a chance to read it. So 3, he was an important public figure. He was a religious figure, but being the leader of the Coptic Church made him also a public figure in Egypt. He always fought for the rights of the Copts. I don't know if anybody's seen him previously in interviews on, Egyptian TV channels. He was always, a really important guest. People questioned him a lot. People interviewed him a lot. So he's an important public figure. He had really good relationships with, okay relationships with some of the presidents, and troublesome relationships with presidents like Sadat, who actually made him go to exile for 4 years in the monastery. But he never was afraid to speak for Christians' rights, but he always had the wisdom to say the right thing. So he was really important in the public world as well. And actually we see that in his funeral. Hundreds of thousands attended his funerals, both Christians and Muslims. I don't know if you have, if you remember, the images showed that the streets were flooded with people. It was a huge funeral, and it just showed how impactful he was. He was a wise leader. So I'm not going to say too much about that, because I think we've all seen his sermons. We've seen how wise he is generally. But I do want to make a kind of something that made me laugh before about what he said in one of the kind of TV shows when he was interviewed. Someone asked him, so they were trying to make him say the wrong thing. So they asked him, so where are Muslims going to go when they die? And he provided the perfect response. He said, he's like, where do Muslims? So he's like, Muslims will go to their prophet, just like Christians will go to their God. Now, that was just perfect. It was like very accurate, but also very wise without jeopardizing anything. And then he was also a missionary. So the Coptic Church was at the time centered around Egypt, but then it became very worldwide. He introduced churches in Africa, America, Europe. Hundreds of churches were opened worldwide under his papacy. And I know that, I don't know if you know Father Anthony Messa from America. He spoke a lot about how Sayyidina, the Pope Shenouda, wanted to push an American Orthodox church to create a missionary church to appeal to general Americans so that it can be introduced to the Coptic faith. So he was a missionary. He also entered into a lot of dialogue with other denominations to kind of bring the churches together, with the view of bringing churches together and bridging any gaps between us. And number 6, I don't have a slide for that one, but he was also a saint, which is, something that we saw in his lifetime, but also now. And I want to say a quick story about about a miracle that happened. So there was a girl who was going to his Wednesday meetings. So just like I think Pope Tawadros now does Wednesday meetings where he gives a sermon and then he answers questions. A girl was on her way to the meeting, and the driver took a different route. And eventually it turned out that he was trying to kidnap her, and he took her to a flat where basically she was going to be raped and abused. And she started praying for God to save her, and she mentioned the Pope's name, and she said, I was on my way to your talk, and this is happening to me. And she sees him, he appears to her, he comes and holds her hand, and the next minute she sees herself walking up the stairs of the cathedral on her way to his talk. So she goes and sits down in the talk, and she writes him a message in the question time. And she says, thank you for saving me from what was about to happen to me. And he says to her, so he acknowledges it, but he says, this is not within my power. This is the power of Christ who saved you. So he was a saint, and it's so refreshing to have a modern saint that we can look up to and remember. And I did speak a lot about, the fact that he's on a spiritual level that's really high. But I think his example shows that this is attainable. We can all reach high spiritual levels if we live by his example and the examples of our lovely saints. And I'll leave you with a final quote. Every saint has a past, and every sinner has a future. So if we're sinners, guys, it's not the end of the world. We are all sinners, and there's still a future for us. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm gonna be talking about Abu Nabshoy Kamil, and it's gonna be a short glimpse into his life. His life is predominantly built on two main pillars, and that is a life of service and a life dedicated to the cross. And when I say that, he really, really embodied service to the cross. There's a verse in Matthew that's Jesus is talking to his disciples, and he's saying, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. And his life shows that Abu Nabshoy Kamil really did every day pick up the cross. He had a photo, an icon of the cross, literally, like of Christ on the cross in his bedroom. And everything he does revolved around that, and you could really see in his life. He was born Sami Kamil in Egypt in 1931, and he is remembered not only as a priest, but also as a teacher, a servant, a church builder, and a man who lived for Christ. From an early age, he loved learning, and he went to the University of Alexandria, and he always done really well in his academic life. And he got a Bachelor of Science and then a degree in literature, and also studied psychology, education, philosophy, and he often came top of his class. And that really shaped the way that he taught, preached, and served others. But it wasn't just about learning or accumulating qualifications. It was learning how to better serve others. Through his learning, he could better serve others. And as a young man, he served in Sunday school at the Church of the Blessed Virgin in Muharrem Bay. And he also did free tutoring, and he cared deeply about everyone's spiritual and personal growth. You know the verse in the Bible that says, whoever is faithful with very little will also be faithful with much. And whoever is dishonest with little will also be dishonest with much. Imagine at work they give him a pen, and he would refuse to use that pen for other purposes outside of work. Look at the honesty there. It's dedicated for work, it's going to be used for work. It's not to be used for something else. He'd carry another pen for that. Big turning point came on the 18th of November 1959. Sami took his Sunday school class to receive the blessing of the newly ordained Pope of Alexandria, Baba Krullos. And to his surprise, he was told that he would be ordained a priest. And out of humility, he tried to refuse. He earlier wanted the monastic life. He was seeking the monastic life. But when he came, Pope Krullos told him, no, you're going to be a priest. He was like, but I'm not even married. You have to be married, generally speaking, to be a priest. And Baba Krullos was like, don't worry about that. God will find you a woman who will be perfect for you. And he did just that. You know how you always hear about a God-fearing, the guys would hear about finding a God-fearing woman, and actually, Zaman, one of my friends said something to me, and he said that a wife or the partner, your future partner, could either lead you to heaven or lead you to hell. And that really resonated with me. Abu Nabshoy found a wife. Her name is Tasoni Angel, and she was the perfect woman for him. She wanted exactly what he wanted, a life dedicated to service. And I think, off the top of my head, they got, after the meeting with Baba Krullos, he met her very shortly afterwards, basically went up to her and said, marry me. And I think the week after they got married, it was really quick. And then the week after that, he got ordained. And they both lived a life of asceticism, basically. In ascetic continence, and they lived the life serving the poor, tutoring children, bringing guests home on feast nights to share meaning. and joy of the Lord's feasts. Tasoni and Jel truly became the partner God had prepared for him. Together they lived a life of simplicity, sacrifice, and total dedication to serving others. They were always known for welcoming people into their home and helping the poor and sharing the joy of the church's feasts with those who had very little. Father Bishoy also helped build churches. He founded St. George Church in Sporting in Alexandria, where he is now buried, but he also helped establish many other churches, including a whole load of other churches, which I'm not going to read, but including churches even in Los Angeles. A famous story actually about building a church in Los Angeles is they were trying to raise money. It was a new community. They're trying to raise money to buy this church, and they needed to raise £100,000. Abuna Choi, through literally managed to raise $23,000. Sorry, did I say pounds earlier? I meant dollars. They're in America. $23,000 for the down payment. Yeah, from very poor people, very poor families that had just migrated there. He managed to raise $23,000 for down payment. This one time, he took a taxi to the bank to pay the deposit, but accidentally left the envelope full of cash in a taxi. Taban, he was absolutely devastated. Thinking he had failed, that night the taxi driver came to his home and returned the money, saying he could not keep the money that belonged to a priest. The church was purchased and the congregation grew, and it was just an incredible example of God's providence. There are a whole load of stories and miracles that are related to Abuna Bishoy Kamel. He really was incredible in the way he lived his life. I have a whole load of story, but I realize we only have not that much time. But there was this one time to show you his dedication. So his whole life was lived for saving souls. He saw each individual, not as a child, not as a kid, not as a woman, not as a man, not as anything, but as a soul to save for Christ. And there's the story of this young girl, Coptic girl, who got into a relationship with a Muslim guy. And they had this thing in Egypt where basically a priest can go and basically speak to her. How successful that was, I don't know, generally speaking, but a priest would go, sit down, and Abuna Bishoy went and sat down with this girl. And she was not having any of it. She wasn't happy not having any of it. She fell in love with this Muslim guy and just wanted to get with him and didn't want to hear what Abuna Bishoy had to say. So at one point, she just got angry and stormed out. Got in the car with the Muslim guys. What did Abuna Bishoy do? He went, grabbed onto the car and wouldn't let go. They started driving off, but he wouldn't let go. So immediately the girl was like, stop the car. She got out and she was like, if a priest can love me this much, how much more can God love me? And she came back to Christ. Also, Abuna on his way to church every day, there was a young boy, Muslim boy as well, would always, out of disrespect, throw orange peels at Abuna as he's walking to church every day. And Abuna Bishoy would never take a different route. Every single day he would go to church and he will take the exact same route, and the kid will throw insults at him and throw orange peels and completely disrespect him. This one day, the boy wasn't there. Abuna got concerned about the boy who disrespects him. He goes, asks around, and he finds that the boy was ill. He goes, gets the boy oranges, goes, visits him with tabtab alo. Imagine that. The guy that disrespected him, the boy that's disrespecting him every day, he cared about him and he loved him and he didn't show the same disrespect back. Like I said, he had a massive love for cross and for Christ crucified. He wrote books titled Under the Feet of the Cross and With Christ Crucified. And in 1976, he was diagnosed with cancer. and he endured severe pain, but he was very happy going through that, and he called it the disease unto the kingdom. He spent long hours in prayer looking at the cross and praising God, turning his suffering into a form of worship. His spirituality centered on what we call a theology of the cross, meaning that everything in the Christian life is understood through Christ crucified. The image of the cross that he had in his room, underneath it, it said, "For my sake." And that's really the image that Abu Nabshoy carried with him his whole life. Before his death, he spoke of heaven opening before him, as he could already see what awaited him. And he never prayed, he never complained to God, he never prayed that God takes this away from him. If anything, it was what he longed for, to feel the cross, to pick up his cross. He ended up passing away, and at his funeral, there was 500,000 people at his funeral. And yet, it was said of him that, well, it was recorded, I think, and there's these two, I think they were Muslim also, but these two men, security guards, were said, even this 500,000 people doesn't do him justice. He was that great of a man. Talking about Taban, I said his wife, Sonia Angel, she was an incredible woman, and they really lived together in purity, and they served together, and he loved her so much and she loved him. And there's loads of recordings of her on YouTube speaking about their life together. But apparently there's this story that after he passed away, she wanted to park her car somewhere, but she didn't have the money. So she dropped the car off at the valet and said, "I'm sorry, I'm gonna pay you on my way back." She went wherever it is she was going to. When she came back, she came to pay him. He was like, no, don't worry, your man already covered it. She was like, "What do you mean?" He was like, yeah. He wears black, he came and he paid for it. This was after he had passed away. Imagine, after he had passed away, he's still looking after his wife. This is crazy. I'm gonna just conclude by saying what Pope Shenouda said about him. After he passed, Pope Shenouda said, "We didn't lose a servant, we lost a school." And that's it.
Shy? A little bit? Not me. Jenny was shy, I'm not shy, trust me. I'm a bit old school. I'm not old, but I am old school. And in IT, they told us, do not reinvent the wheel. So I've printed PDFs for you to go and check out the history, yeah? Mickey, sorry. Yeah? You guys can see that. Instead of me having a slideshow, because I'm not as fancy as these guys, all of this stuff, I'm just gonna talk at you for a little bit, all right? I did not know Abu Namkhail Ibrahim at all. I did not know his story. I've seen pictures, and he does look a little bit resemble Abu Namkhail Ibrahim who was here, a little bit, from previous pictures I saw. I'm gonna talk a little bit about snippets of his life when he was working. So I'm skipping all the early years and stuff like that. From everything that I saw of this guy is a man of faith. And a lot of these saints, by the way, they have a lot of overlaps, which you'll see and you'll read yourselves. But his career, his bosses, I'm going to talk, like I said, little things, miracles that happened in his life and everything. His bosses didn't like the fact that he would take time off to go to liturgy. His love for God was so strong that he would take time off in the mornings, because he said that Sunday is the day of the Lord. And no matter what happened, he would not miss that liturgy. So he took time off. But they didn't like that. Even though he was coming and he took permission, everything, they did not like that at all. So his boss started antagonizing him and giving him issues. What happened was Saint Mary appeared to his boss's wife, not to him, to his boss's wife, and told him, "You tell your husband, this guy belongs to us, you stay away." And she came with such fear to her husband, they changed from there. He gave him the permission. He told him to do what he do. Even when, I'm giving examples at the time, I don't know the hierarchy of jobs back then, Abuna, but the area manager came by and he tried to cause all sorts of issues. Management stood in and said, you will never find a guy like this. You know, we will not lose him. So they stood up for him. And it goes to show that he was a man of faith without actually seeing. So blessed are those who believe without seeing. He was a man of faith without seeing any of these things. But people will talk about him, not him. Another example, how he started his life with Pope Shenouda even before Pope Shenouda became Pope. Pope Shenouda was running Sunday school at the time, and he gets a phone call, and they say to him, we need you to come and give a sermon in this area. It's very important you come. And Abuna was sitting with him right there and then, and he picks up the phone. He's like, I'm really sorry, I'm not going to do it. And they're on the phone. Abuna's sitting there listening to the call, and he puts the phone down, decides he's not going to do it. Then Abuna says to him, why are you not going to give the sermon? He said to him, because I'm used to giving sermons to a classroom full of people that are of the same age, same intellectual background. But over there are in villages, some of them are uneducated, some of them educated, some of this. And he said to him, I just have a quick question, just so I can understand. When someone gives a sermon, is it God that talks or is it you? And he said to him, no, of course, God Abuna. He said to him, then why are you talking about yourself? And from then on, Pope Shenouda, who became Pope Shenouda, decided to go and give the sermon, and that's where his sermon started going into villages and so on. Later, he became Pope Shenouda's father of confession. He became actually father of confession for Pope Shenouda and Abuna Bishoy Kamil. So he was both their father of confession. And they said because he was such a humble man and a man of faith that during confession, he would not just tell you what to do, but he would help you. So if Miki walked in and he started confessing and said, oh, I've done this and that, and then Abuna would tell him, well, Miki, you have to do 400 mutaniyat. But he can see that Miki is struggling. He'll tell him, Miki, I know you're struggling, so I'm going to do them for you. But when you get well, you start doing them bit by bit. And he will sit in the confession room doing the 400 mutaniyat with Miki sitting there. And that's the kind of man he was. He wouldn't just say the words, but he wouldn't just talk the talk, basically he'll walk it. To show the kind of love this guy had for God, during liturgy and how important liturgy was for him, I mean, I'm the biggest culprit in this. Sorry, Abuna. But during liturgy, we come during Ras al-Sana, and when I was working as a taxi driver, I could not wait. Come on, let's go straight out, and we want to go. Or sometimes, Abuna, can I leave early? If you're a deacon, some deacons want to go and leave early. Imagine this. My daughter, Philomena, if she gets ill, I'm worried about her. I'm not in the medical background, Jenny is, so she comforts everything, but I'm super worried about her, even if she gets ill. This guy, during liturgy, he gets someone run up to him and he says to him, your son Butros has just been run over by a trailer or some sort of vehicle and has died during liturgy. So he's pulling him. He's a deacon, he's pulling him. And he said to him, I'm not going. He said to him, what do you mean? I'm telling you, your son is dead. He's lying on the ground. He's not moving. He's dead. And he said to him, how can I leave my Lord at the altar? And my son is dead. The Lord gives, the Lord takes. May the Lord's name. So he had such good faith that he believed that. And because he went back into liturgy, as soon as he came out of liturgy, his son ran up to him. And it turns out, as soon as the liturgy had ended, his son woke up and started walking and walked back into his arms. That's the kind of man and the love he had for God. And it just makes me think about really what we do now, or me in particular, when we say, oh, I'll just wait. I can't wait until that's finished. Oh, I'm going to leave earlier. I don't really need to wait for the waza. I can leave, or I don't need to wait for this. This guy, no. Doesn't matter if I lose my job, if I lose my son, if I lose anything, I'm not leaving liturgy. Again, talking about his children, he was then tried again by two of his children asleep. They contract meningitis together and both die in one night. So obviously, you know, The wife is in hysterics and she's crying and all of these things. And he sits there smiling and telling her not to cry and thanks God for taking his children, saying, now we have one on the right and one on the left to intercede for us. So we have 2 children to intercede for us. I mean, honestly, this stuff, like you hear Mary Girgis, Mary Mina, all the stuff they went through themselves. But I don't know, maybe because I'm a new father and when I always kind of related it to Philomena. And I was like, literally, Jenny will tell you, if she coughs, I'm in hysterics, like, sure, we got to the doctor, do we need to do this and that? Never think about it. And we talked to Abuna about this when we did Bible studies. We always say to Abuna, we don't want the textbook answer. Because it will be, let's pray about it. Well, we want something practical. But for Abuna Mikhail Ibrahim, prayer was the practical thing. Prayer, that's what it was. Anything you wanted, you pray. In fact, he was very much known for assigning assignments to different saints. So depending what the problem was, he would assign a saint for this problem. And they say, okay, Inter Marimina, you have this to do today. Literally, that's what he, imagine someone walking into church and he says, okay, we've got it upstairs. Inter Marimina, you have this to look after, you have this, and that. And that's how he was dealing with things. Now, overlapping with, I think, Andrew, about, it seems to be a theme where kids in the street throwing things at these saints, I don't know why, but he had the same problem. But how you handle it was different. He also had kids throwing stuff at him, and he was with another Abuna, I'm not going to mention his name, but the Abuna got angry, and he was like, do you know who this Abuna is? Do you not have respect? Have you not been brought up, this and that? And Abuna Mikhail turned around and said, stop, why are you doing this? God is using us to be entertainment for the kids. Do you not understand that? Why do you want to take that away? This is a blessing for us. We are being used to be entertainment for these young ones. They are the future. Let them enjoy themselves. When they're gone, you will be sad. And then Abuna just stayed quiet after that.